After losing his job, Daniel moved back into his childhood home with his parents and younger sister. The transition was difficult, leaving him with feelings of inadequacy and vulnerability. Upon returning, he felt a vague sense of unease, particularly around his uncle, who visited the house frequently. Although Daniel couldn't quite place his discomfort, the presence of his uncle stirred something unsettling within him. It started with subtle disturbances, fleeting shadows, and a sense of being watched. Soon, Daniel began experiencing sleep paralysis, finding himself unable to move or speak, yet fully aware of his surroundings. Each night, as he lay in bed, a heavy, oppressive presence seemed to linger in the corners of his room. Initially, the paralysis was unsettling but manageable. He felt a cold, heavy pressure around him, as if an invisible force was squeezing his chest. The room's temperature would drop sharply, and a menacing shadow would emerge, growing increasingly distinct. Daniel sensed it inching closer, its presence suffocating him with a palpable dread. As the nights wore on, the paralysis grew more intense. The oppressive presence became a force pressing down on him, making it difficult to breathe. The darkness seemed to close in tighter each night, enveloping him more completely. One night, the terror reached its peak. The presence was now physically on top of him, its weight almost unbearable. The darkness felt like it was trying to suffocate him. Desperation gripped him as he struggled against the invisible restraints, but his efforts were futile. In his deepest fear, Daniel managed to turn his head slightly and catch a glimpse of the figure's face. The sight sent a jolt of horror through him. It was the face of his uncle, the man who had been visiting and who had made him feel uneasy. The horrifying realization struck him. This entity was a manifestation of the trauma he had long suppressed. The face brought back memories of past trauma, each one more vivid and painful than the last. The figure seemed to mock him with a sinister expression. The realization that the entity represented his buried trauma was almost too overwhelming. The following night, Daniel's sleep paralysis took a new and eerie turn. He woke to find himself in a chilling vision, where his uncle was being tormented by the very entity that had haunted Daniel. The dark figure was now in his uncle's room, its form twisting grotesquely as it loomed over him. Daniel watched, a mix of fear and grim satisfaction, as the entity appeared to exact its own form of retribution. The room was filled with unsettling sounds, the uncle's muffled cries and the oppressive whispers of the entity. His uncle was now helpless against the same darkness that had tormented Daniel. When Daniel awoke, the house was eerily silent. The uncle had vanished without a trace, and the oppressive presence was gone. Though the horrors of the past nights had left their mark, Daniel felt a strange sense of closure. The entity's vengeance seemed to have brought a semblance of justice, leaving Daniel with a renewed resolve to face his fears and reclaim his life.